Transit. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our July Governance, Communications, and Human Resources Committee meeting. My name is Debbie Douglas, and I'm the acting chair of the committee. Welcome to the public session of today's hybrid committee meeting, which is taking place in person at TCHC headquarters at 931 Yonge and virtually on here on WebEx. As usual, we want to acknowledge this land that we are so blessed to be on, the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to a diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I also want to acknowledge that Toronto is Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas territory, as well as the with One Spoon Wampum Belt agreement between the Haudenosaunee and Ojibwe Confederacies. As we head into August next month and Emancipation Day, I also want to acknowledge my people, people of African descent who were forcefully brought here over 400 years ago and who continue to live and contribute on this place we call Toronto and more broader Canada. During today's public session, there is one report being brought forward for our committee's approval and 5 reports that are brought forward for information. We have deputations this morning. We have 2 live deputations, and we received 1 written deputation from one of our tenants. I hope you've had a chance to read it. All 3 deputations are on the deputation policy, so of course we will hold that. For committee members, Uba and Brian, are there any other items that you would like to hold? So we will hold number 10, which is our policy on deputations. Anything else you would like to hold?
I'd just like some information about city directives.
Good. I was going to hold number 6 as well, Brian. So we'll hold number 6 as well. Uba?
No, I'm not holding anything. Thank you.
Okay, so we're holding number 6 and number 10. Not hearing any, Uba doesn't have any. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting? Thank you, Brian. Seconded by Uba. Thank you. Any conflict of interest to declare? Seeing none, we will now move. Oh, can I also have confirmation of public meeting minutes of the meeting of May 15th? Uba and Brian. Thank you. There is nothing out of business arising, so we'll move to item number 6. Brian, I will give you the floor first. If you have welcome, Marcel.
I just wanted some information about directives and whether other bodies such as TGC and police, basically the same kind of directives that are sent from City Council. It just seems to me, as we're planning to go through a strategic planning session, and obviously that would be, but I just think that if we're going to be continuing to get directives from the city, it may take us, I'm not disputing their right to do it. I'm just saying it just seems that it is not the way that I think an organization, an incorporated organization, can work. I mean, certainly the city can set out what they want us to accomplish in a year, but from time to time getting directives to take us in one way or another, and I'm sure all with good reason, it just seems to me sort of counterproductive to going through a huge strategic planning process and then finding ourselves maybe being directed to go in slightly different directions from time to time. And I just wondered whether this, you may know, Dara, whether the other corporations that are the TTC and the police, for example, are sort of within the same sort of process. Excuse me. So so it's just clarification that I'm trying to get, because it seems to me that if there are these many directives, basically, I feel we're being treated as a city department rather than an independent organization.
So, through the chair, many of the council directives that we're reporting are decisions from council that direct boards of its agencies and corporations to do various things. It's true that some of the directives are specific to Toronto community housing. I believe the council does as well issue similar directives to the TTC and Toronto Parking Authority, but many are general in nature, so we're caught within the broad group of city-related corporations and agencies that are subject to the directions when they're of a more general nature.
Yeah, it seems that a lot of ours are very specific.
That may reflect the importance of the city's interest in affordable housing as a major policy of city council.
Yeah, I'm sure that's true. It's just it's more in terms of governance process that I'm was raising this question. Not I have no disagreement that the city has the authority. It's just, if you're setting up an independent body to do it, they could set out what our objectives should be every year, and we can agree on those. And then our task is to deliver on the specifics that the city has agreed that for the organization. So that's my only concern, because it does put if I read through all of them, it is directing our CEO through the board to do specific things, which may or may not take him off focus to the things that we've asked him to do. So it's just that issue. I just think that we probably have a discussion, perhaps with our 3 councillors that are on our board, just to get some clarification on this, and because I do feel there's a lot of pressure on our CEO trying to. He sort of got 2 masters basically, and can be a problem. So this at some point, I just think this may need to be raised in conjunction with our discussion around our strategic plan, and making sure that obviously the city agrees and supports whatever the final decision on the strategic plan is, but that we can spend our time and direct our CEO to accomplish the outcomes that are required for the accomplishing the strategic plan.
Madam Chair, can I speak to this one as well?
Yes, please.
Thanks. So I appreciate you raising the question. And I've been through the list and have sort of similar concerns. I guess what I would say is the majority of items on the list are actually quite specific and tactical, regarding specific neighborhoods, in fact, and what we ought to do in very specific neighborhoods and developments. So I would suggest most of those probably won't interfere with our strategic plan. And in many cases, we're aware of them and working with the councillor well in advance of them becoming council directors. Not always, but in the majority of cases, I think we're doing that. What I can offer is sort of 2 things. One is we can make sure that we're in good connection and communication with the city around the strategic plan, and ensuring that we're aligned on what it's trying to accomplish big picture. But then we can also take a look at when directives come out or when we're aware that they might come out that might be running in opposition to the goals of our strategic plan. And then we could bring those forward for a conversation at the board with our council members of our board to see what could be done about that.
Thank you, Sean. One of the, as I was reading through them this morning, I was thinking some of these have been on the books for 3-4 years. So I'm not sure how effective this process is or how efficient this process is. For example, we thought it was quite urgent, and one of the reasons I wanted to hold this, that to have a conversation with the Ombudsman in terms of holding an investigation into our corporation without informing the governance body. I've noted that there is no plan date yet from the Ombudsman's office in terms of when they can meet with the board, as has been requested by our board chair last October. And that's fairly recent. You know, there are other things that's been on here since 2020, 21, 22. So I get your point, Brian. But if someone can give me a sense, maybe Dara or Nadia, if you know whether or not the Ombudsman plans to come to chat with us about process issues, that would be great.
It's actually quite tied to your question, Madam Chair. The Ombudsman will be attending the July board meeting to present their report and findings in relation to our tenant human rights complaint process.
Very good. Thank you for that. Brian, anything else on this?
No, I just, as we're working on our strategic plan, is just to sort of make sure that both the council and ourselves are on the same page, and the you know the key items that need to be monitored to show that we're achieving those objectives we're aligned with the city, so that you know, the results that we get, we pass them on to the city, and that and that they're quite accepting the results, so that you know, we want to just be aligned with the city, so that we both council and I guess senior staff at the city and ourselves are all aligned with the objectives that we end up deciding on from the strategic planning process, and the KPIs that are monitoring those objectives.
Very good. Marcel or Uba, anything to comment or questions you may have on this item? No? Thank you. Thanks for flagging this. And good to hear that the Ombudsman will be coming to our meeting later this month. Okay, so a motion to approve. Am I approving, Dara?
A motion to receive.
To receive this report. Thank you, Brian. Marcel, thank you. All in favor? Yay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm moving to item number 10. As I said, you received a written deputation in your package, but we also have 2 deputants. I will go in alphabetical order. So Kathy Birch. Good morning, Catherine. Hi, Kathy. Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Dara will start your time, and welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm here to speak to item 10. First, let me say that the process by which this report was developed was and is insufficiently done, and done in a marketing style that made it less valuable by asking questions rather than having a group of tenants go through the policy with staff line by line and break it down. We as tenants have waited 14 years since this policy's been updated for a true review of this policy, and this corporation has failed to deliver that kind of scrutiny. Yet as a stakeholder, you want us to support this report. It tells me that the corporation wants to do what's easiest for staff rather than produce a quality policy. While I appreciate that simple language is noted to do before taking it to board, nowhere does it say after the rewrite that they will review with RPath for plain language as part of accessibility. And let's be honest here, these are lawyers writing this. You can't expect them to write without being reviewed by us. Never have I seen this legal team or previous legal teams for that matter be able to write anything simply enough, right down to words like stakeholders or mechanisms. If you're new to Canada and English is not your first language, these are not words that you learn at an early stage of English as a second language. The report says there are no major changes. Yes, there are. The guidelines are outdated by years. Like the meeting time should not be changed less than 7 calendar days in advance, except in extreme emergencies, because if I need to use Wheel-Trans to get to or from this meeting or a board, and the timing is changed after that, I may not get my needed rides in order to participate. I've had meetings start late that make me not able to depute because of my pickup time. I've had that happen many times too. I've had times where they took all of my deputations for all the items at once because of my ride times, and it doesn't get applied at the time of the actual item. And therefore, you're expecting members of this committee to remember what I've said, and it becomes ineffective. I could give you a life experience that I could go on, but I don't feel we have time for all of that. These are major changes to this policy because it affects how others prepare and deliver the actual subject of the policy. While I did enjoy the conversation with staff as to what kinds of changes needed to be done, they've only done half the job of reviewing it. We need to sit down together, go through it line by line, make the changes, then bring it before this committee and board. I do not accept this report to push this through to board when we, the people who affected, have not gone through it with staff to develop a quality policy. Make this team go back to bring it to the stakeholders, us tenants who've deputed many times, to focus a focus group and edit line by line before you pass it to board. There are not many of us in the past decade. Furthermore, it's almost laughable that staff act like they want deputations at committee and board meetings. And I'm going to tell you why. Because those responsible for these meetings hardly ever adequately account for how much time a meeting will take, including deputations. These people aren't stupid. They know what items on the agenda will result in multiple deputations. Tenant engagement should require training on how to write and deliver deputations, but that too should be done by staff and tenants who've been there, done it. Make staff go back and put together an editing team that includes staff, RPath for accessibility, and other tenants, so it is current and accurate, and we, the editing team, actually see the end product, and only then bring it back to this committee before passing it to board. Don't accept this just because it comes from legal. Make them provide a good end product by doing the right steps instead of manipulating the process to making it easier for them. Truly move this corporation the right way. Stop this train wreck and do right by your tenants. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Questions to staff or clarification from Kathy? Yes, Uba?
Thank you, Debbie. Good morning. And I heard Kathy came in front of us and talk about the same thing in terms of accessibility and timeline, and when, how many, days we give people to come, like Kathy. So I would like staff to look into that and take it seriously, please. And the other thing is, in terms of the language, I agree with Kathy. We are not all lawyers. I mean, you can see English is my second language. and we should provide multiple language that tenants can understand and participate, whatever it is, whether it's this report or any other report. So that's my two, one ask and one comment. Thank you.
Staff, and I'm not sure, Nadia, if it's you or someone else, is it possible to go back to a tenant group to do a line by line audit edit, as Kathy is suggesting?
So I'll speak to it, Madam Chair. So appreciate the comments and the questions. So the report that's coming forward today does not actually have a revised policy in it, right? So this is a report back on what has been heard from the consultation process thus far. Work is still underway to create a revised policy. We've heard a lot, they're happy to have a conversation about plain language and how this can be revised to include plain language. That's absolutely not a concern. And many of the issues that I heard raised in the deputation are things that we would address in the revision of the policy as well. So we're just not there yet, but more than happy to have a conversation about it before it comes back to the committee for final approval of the policy.
That's good. So that's a commitment, Kathy. Sean, one of the written deputations also is recommending that there is a new position created called tenant support, which is a position that will work with tenants to orient them on how to do deputations, what they need to pay attention to, how the 5-minute rule works, what the protocols are about presenting to board or committee, those kinds of things. So I just want to ensure that that is all part of your conversation as we continue to move forward in revising our deputation process and policy. Yes.
So we can look at that question as well, but I would want to look at that in context because we're also looking at potential training and support for tenants who engage in a variety of ways with us. So that could be part of that broader question of what's the right level of supports to provide to tenants as they engage with the corporation.
Very good.
Debbie, it's Brian. I also wanted to ask, we have the tenant advisory committee who this has been discussed with, and I'm wondering whether that, I would assume it's the right, I don't know who's on it, whether it's representative enough or not, but I would assume that would be the right vehicle to discuss. Otherwise, you're just picking people at random or who have, so I'm just wondering whether working with the tenant advisory committee is the right process, and going through these questions that Kathy has raised and then bringing any revised policy back.
Kathy's shaking her head no.
I don't know what the question is. Why do we have a tenant advisory committee if it isn't doing the job I think it should be doing?
So if I may, through the chair,
Go ahead.
there's two very reasonable ways to approach it. One would be to talk to the tenant advisory committee. That's part of why that committee was set up. But a second would be to talk to tenants who regularly provide deputations. And so I think both of those approaches have been used from a collection of information perspective, and we can also look at both from a, let's review the policy and make sure that we've got everything right before bringing it back. So I have to do that.
Very good. Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Catherine, you have the floor.
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. And just to give a heads up to Brian, this went to the TAC committee, of which I am a member. So it has already been through that process, but I'll come back to that. Okay, so I don't understand why the committee did not have a copy of the deputation policy itself attached to this report. It would help the directors refresh their memory what's in that policy. And I will guarantee you, if you did, you would absolutely not support this proposal before you. It is 14 years is a lot of years And during that time, a lot has changed at this corporation. You know, I actually, I realize staff have determined it doesn't need to be revised. And quite frankly, I don't think they could be more wrong. If the power of a deputation truly has the potential to change a committee decision or report before them, today is that day. This policy, of all policies, as indicated in the title, is intended for stakeholders. We, the tenants, are your primary stakeholders. The tenants have spoken. They have recommended the policy needs to be revised. The presentation at TAC was really about educating tenants about the board itself. They had no idea there was a board. They didn't know what the committees did. So it primarily focused on that with a couple of key questions. We did not actually sit and look at the deputation policy itself. Much like you didn't have it in front of you, we didn't have it in front of us. So as per past practice, this policy was developed in conjunction with tenant consultation, and that must continue. And we know who those stakeholders are that need to be at the table. Well, it must comply with, a standard policy template used by Toronto Community Housing. It needs to be understood that this is not about the policy meeting the needs of staff. It's about meeting the needs of tenants. So since its creation, and this is a fact, okay, the corporation has made no attempt to actually educate tenants about this policy. And quite frankly, there was not a lot of interest in having tenants dispute before the board. Times have changed. During the tenant consultations in 2005 and 10, the policy was revised to reflect the needs of the board, tenants, and the organizational structure in place at that time. Keep that in mind. The policy in its current form meets none of that criteria. Under next steps, it's not so much about Toronto Housing providing tenants an opportunity to dispute as it is their right to dispute on items which directly impact them, accorded to them by the shareholders' agreement. We, the tenants, don't want staff to decide what tenants need in the policy or creating materials to post on the website that work for staff but not for tenants. Use of language, deputants can provide the board with information and clarify issues. That is absolutely not the tenant perspective at all. In the contrary, tenants dispute because reports before the board do not meet their needs or reflect the lived experience of tenants. Tenants have one shot to make their case to the board or committee in hopes they will consider their recommendations before accepting or adopting these reports. Rarely does Toronto Housing include stakeholder feedback in reports, although there has been a commitment to do this, to strive to do this more going forward. The deputation policy states tenant reps will receive a copy of this policy. Not true? Never happened. Deputation policy says you can only dispute once on the same item. It does not say deputants can dispute on more than one item. The deputation policy states it is posted in the operating unit offices. Not true. Never happened. OUs have been replaced by service hubs. The existing policy, therefore, does not reflect the current organizational structure. The policy indicates materials will be posted on the website up to 10 days in advance. We all know that was changed, and it actually is posted in 7 days. I'm asking the governance committee to direct management to take the following steps. 1, tenant engagement staff create a tenant staff working group for a specific period of time to design a tenant deputation template. 2, that they work with the communication staff to create a permanent community poster. 3 is to provide training sessions for tenant reps and other members of the tenant engagement system, followed by general tenant information meetings portfolio-wide. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, and thank you for your very specific recommendations. So we have a number of issues on the floor. We've heard that the report in front of us is recommending that a revision happens in terms of paying attention to plain language. The survey itself of staff, of tenants, showed that over 70% indicated that they would depute if they had more information about it, if I'm reading that report correctly. And so I think some of the recommendations brought forward by all three deputants, the two Catherine and Kathy, as well as tenant U. I'm not sure about their gender, so I'm calling them tenant U. Also asks, and tenant U speaks specifically as someone with English as a second language, also asks for some sort of ongoing promotion, encouragement of tenants to come forward and the supports to help them do so. Sean, I've heard a commitment from you to take that back and look at some of these issues. And so I believe we can leave it there with the commitment that the recommendations that's been put forward will be taken seriously by management and the staff responsible for moving forward this new policy on deputations.
If I may, yes, I didn't hear anything in any of the requests or the deputations that sounded unreasonable. I'd be happy to take a look at how various requests can be accommodated within the policy. I think when the language in the report came forward and said no major revisions, perhaps it's a bit of semantics. That doesn't mean we can't change things like ensuring materials are posted and ensuring that there's appropriate time before a meeting would get changed and whatnot. So those are all very reasonable requests, along with the request for plain language of the policy, as well as more effective communication and encouragement of tenants to be heard and various opportunities for how their voices to be heard. So I've heard all of that, and we can make sure that we incorporate all of that into this and have conversations with our tenants before we bring it back for final approval here at this committee. So it might take a bit of time, but I'm fine with that, and we just need to get it right.
Very good. Thank you both. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Catherine. All right, Brian?
Just in terms of process, in terms of what Kathy has discussed, whether it needs to be taken back to the tenant advisory committee and them invite any other deputants who want to participate in that process and to review the actual policy and then bring it back to our committee here, whether that, Sean, would be the best process to go through other than
A subcommittee of TAC with additional members.
well, I mean, obviously, I don't know who's on that committee, but obviously, by the sounds of it, there is interest in having more ability to have input from some former or current deputants. So, I'm just trying to think of the process to make it as quick and straightforward as possible and meet the concerns that have been raised.
So through the chair, yeah, I think speaking to TAC makes a lot of sense. That's part of the reason why TAC was created. However, in addition to that, we also know that there's a number of tenants who regularly depute, and so would have perhaps more up-to-date knowledge about how the policy works for them or doesn't work for them. So I think both of those groups make a lot of sense for us to talk about.
No, I was suggesting they be included in whatever that process is that.
Yeah, a subcommittee with additional members, but formed through TAC as the framework. Ziva, did you have a comment or question?
I think Catherine had a question.
Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, thank you for indulging me. I know this is not protocol, but what I want to remind you is TAC actually didn't even know there was a board, tenants on the board, deputation policy. That is like probably the worst place to bring this back. With all due respect to the members there, if we spent most of our time educating about what it was. There are many tenants who have deputed over the years, and you also need some people who haven't. But with all due respect, our path is the place where the plain language, where understanding the accessibility needs, they are our in-house subject matter experts for tenants, and they need to have a lens. Whether the policy goes to them separate from this other tenant consultation group, as opposed to them coming in and, locking horns with tenants who are not familiar with that. They're not experts. And so we don't want to have a battle about what's appropriate and what isn't in terms of the official writing. I think we need to focus primarily on the content, and making it very clear to tenants how the process works. So, and I will say the thing about TAC that you all need to know, their term is up this year. So while this might have started at TAC ends this year, new people will be coming in. Now you're starting from scratch, also people who are not aware of this. So why start there? I think a separate time-limited focus group needs to be created and sit down and have at this policy, create a template, work on a permanent communications poster, and then we need to educate the people who are already actively involved as tenant reps because they're representing their community. We could just take that one step further by educating them about this in a way they understand, and only hope that more people will depute. So thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
So my concern is if task isn't doing the job, maybe we should be looking at its role. I mean, I would think if we got a tenant advisory committee, they should be able to be doing, either we're not training them enough or we're not, working with them on these because, I mean, I thought that would be the purpose of a tenant advisory committee, is a group that would be able to respond to not just this policy, but a lot of policies, and that tenants might want to have some input and make changes. So it makes me a bit, confused in terms of not a committee, but if it's not doing the job, why do we have it, or why haven't we changed it?
Yeah, Dara, I see you. Catherine, just a minute, please. Kathy, and I know we're breaking protocol here with deputations, but I think this is an important conversation. Kathy?
I really think that TAC is the wrong place to take it for the reasons that Catherine said. Plus, quite honestly, our path was not welcomed as a tenant committee to be a part of TAC. So I pulled away from it because I wasn't treated as a tenant. I was treated more like staff. And we didn't have the same opportunities as other tenants on that committee. So I would prefer that it be a very limited amount of previously experienced tenants who depute and who know how to go through a policy line by line, who have that experience. We can do it more effectively and more efficiently. So I think that taking it to such a large group, it's gonna take us longer, and I think we can get it through a lot faster and correctly. Even when tenants ask for things, or board members in many meetings, they've brought it forward and said, is this coming in different languages? That's part of accessibility. And it needs to be recognized for what it is.
Thank you.
And so I really recommend that you don't take it to TAC and you create a separate committee.
Okay, I think our CEO has heard, and we're looking at a subcommittee. In addition to those who depute all the time, I think it's important to have tenants on there who can also speak about the kinds of supports they require to get them in front of the board and its committees. We truly appreciate both of you showing up. Kath, I'm sorry, we need to move on. But thank you both for bringing this forward, and thank you to tenant UO. They're listening. We appreciated your written submission. Dara?
I was just going to say, I don't see the prospect of bringing the revised policy to TAC and to the RPAS committee for input is mutually exclusive. I think we can do both. And just to note that many of the survey respondents indicated that, as has been observed, they haven't computed in the past for various reasons. And so the only comment that I would make is that in dealing with policy, if there are elements of the policy that are keeping people from computing, then speaking only to people who computed in the past may not receive the input from those who haven't for various reasons.
Yes, and that's why I think any small committee should include those with experience and those without who can help inform what will encourage them to compete, or to at least identify the barriers that that's preventing them from coming forward and sharing their concerns or recommendations or ideas that they may have with the board and its committees. So thank you. This was a good discussion, and thank you for flagging that we needed to go back and the policy needs to be rewritten, and a process needs to be put in place. So content and process, both important. We truly appreciate you coming forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Have a great rest of the day. Dara, did we need a specific approval for item 9, committees and chairs and co-chairs? No.
Well, given that nobody held the matter, we noted it as approved by the committee because the committee's approved everything on the agenda that hasn't been held.
Okay. So it means then that do we have any other business?
Sorry, we do need a motion to.
Oh, sorry, a motion to receive this report. Can we have a motion to receive the update on the deputation policy, please? Thank you, Brian. Seconder. Thank you, Ziva. All in favor? Appreciate it. Okay, any other business? Seeing none. Can I have a motion to end the public meeting? Thank you, Uba. Thank you, Brian. All in favor, yay, yay. Okay, I love short meetings. So we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you.